Welcome to the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders at B2B services, tech, and SaaS companies to learn the systems and processes they've used to create success for their business. And we'll also learn from marketing and sales experts to provide insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and the podcast is brought to you by Modern Revenue Strategies and their 10x ROI B2B growth guarantee. Schedule a free diagnostic call to learn the fastest path to double your B2B revenues in just 90 days. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast. I'm your host, Mark Osborne. Today, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Laura Beauparlant. She is an award-winning international keynote speaker, a brand strategist, and founder of Lab Creative. She's delivered more than 400 keynotes, workshops, and masterclasses around the world, helping entrepreneurs and leadership teams clarify their positioning, strengthen their messaging, and build brands designed for long-term legacy. She's the author of Brand Chemistry, which is a practical framework for attracting the right clients and creating deeper brand alignment. She's also the host of the Legacy Branding podcast. Laura works with founders and business leaders who are ready to sharpen their brand strategy and elevate how they show up to the market, especially those heading into a time of unique transition, like a founder exit, investment, or recapitalization. So Laura, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Yeah, this is going to be a rich conversation for sure.
Yeah. So before we jump into some of the really interesting topics that we've got planned, you've got such an interesting background. You've done so many neat things. Tell our audience a little bit about what that journey looked like that brought you to where you are today.
Well, for those of you listening that are entrepreneurs, you know that it is not a straight line, entrepreneurship. It is anything but. So, and I was pondering that question, like where to start, because it is long and it is windy, but I'll share some highlights. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years now. And my original business was, believe it or not, designing custom wedding stationery. Oh. I had an award-winning, well-received, well-publicized stationery brand that I started in 2004. And I had studied design before that. So I really could see that there was a unique place that I could shape the industry. And I really did. Somewhere along the way, I started getting clients wanting me to design their logos and their websites. And suddenly that ended up overtaking the resources, like the revenue from the invitations. And I wasn't even really trying. But that business had my name on it. It was called Laura K Design. And I knew that it was always just going to be me, and everybody wants to work with Laura. When your name is on the business, bit of a cautionary tale if your name is on the business. And so I'll skip all of the details because it's a big story, but I ended up leaving that business behind. I closed it. I didn't sell it. Again, possibly a story for another day. And I launched Lab Creative, and I created Brand Camp, which is my methodology. And I wanted a business that wasn't my name. I brought in a team. Now I had a designer doing all the design work. I was doing the strategy. But it was a few years ago, I started realizing it's still the same thing, just wrapped up in a different name, in a way, in that I am the business is still founder dependent. It is all about me. Without me, there's no sales, there's no strategy, there's nothing coming in to do the work for my team, or to bring the work to my team. And so I looked at my website. I'm like, my face is on the business, like homepage, it's like the Laura Show. And I started to realize that yes, we have a lot of systems, but the brand was still very much me. And so I really started to work on untangling my own personal brand from the business, because I could see that if I ever wanted to sell Lab Creative one day, I had to start doing that. And even though I had changed the name, it still was me very much. And so, yeah, that really is what led me to create Lab Creative. That was 10 years ago. And then a number of years ago, it was actually a conversation with a client that something really clicked, and why I decided to focus on this specific market of founders in this state of transition, selling a business or post sale. And a client of mine said, I wish I knew you when I was still in my business. I wish that we had done this work so I could have avoided the 3-year identity crisis I had post exit because I lost my identity. And I like light bulbs were going off in my head when we had that conversation. And I thought, this can't be an isolated incident. There has to be more founders that are going through this. And through my podcast and work with other clients, I started to see that this is quite common. And so, before that, we were serving kind of anybody in many ways. We were industry agnostic. We had a wide variety of clients. And while we're not industry specific today, I really love that niche of the founder who is, pre-exit, wants to help clean up the brand, make the brand maybe less founder centric and figure out who they are without the brand so that they hopefully don't have that identity crisis afterwards. So that's like a little bit of the windy story of sort of where I started and where I've ended up.
So we're definitely blessed to have the Laura Show with us today. And I love that you not only sort of the twists and turns, but you're really driven by a really emotional sort of calling, which is helping these founders. And which is a lot more than just, well, I love doing good design, or I'm, really passionate about, even, businesses that are preparing for transition and helping them maximize the value. Like those are all noble callings, but I think it's really telling that it's that personal connection between you and that founder years ago that led you to this focus. And sort of you and I share a unique sort of space in that there are a million marketing and sales experts in the country and around the world. Very few of them focus on this specific business context. And so we'll dive into that. And that context is, the founder exit, for lack of a better phrase. And sometimes it's, going for investment, and sometimes it's, some sort of other M&A activity. But the founder exit's really this, very unique thing where you've, built a really strong practice around. Talk to us a little bit about, and for our audience, you really focus on the sort of the marketing and the creative aspects of sort of the brand strategy that's facing the market, whereas I work more on sort of the sales execution and processes. As you're setting up a business to look ready for purchase, and this isn't necessarily marketing the business to potential buyers as much as it's showing that the marketing is ready for a new buyer and a new operator. What are some of those things that, are really important that a business should think about so that they can maximize the sale price that they're able to get when they do go to market and sell that business?
Yeah. So we always start with the brand audit. So taking a look at all channels, everything from the website to social media, internal documentation, brand guidelines. Do they have them? Do they have that turnkey brand system that they can hand over to a buyer? Yeah. And that's everything from the colors and the fonts to templates to positioning and messaging. Can you actually articulate what makes your brand unique and special? Because if you as the founder can't articulate that, the people trying to sell your business also can't do it. How are you different from your competitors? What is your reputation in the market? Is the business too founder centric, right? Like I mentioned, is your face all over the business? Right. Are you the only one posting on social media? Or is your entire team posting and elevating the business brand? So it's not all just driven by you. So it's looking at a lot of these different points in the brand to go, okay, here are the things you're doing really well. Maybe you're well positioned. You've got a great tagline, positioning statement. It's an easy sell in terms of like, this is what this brand is known for, what they do best. But maybe your internal documentation isn't so hot, or things are outdated. Your last blog post was 2017. It doesn't bode well when you've got really outdated content on your site. So it's looking at all of these little details and going, okay, now we have this baseline of where you're at. And here are the quick fixes that you can make to bring it up to kind of, a great level, or, just maybe even a good level. And then looking at, are there things that we actually need to completely fix, right? Does is the logo completely outdated? Is the website, looks like it was built in 1998? Do we not have an internal brand system, brand guidelines? All of these details can help you to elevate the business brand. If you think about it like real estate, right? It's sort of taking a look at the house, looking at the value of it today. But if you do these few staging things, you fresh coat of paint, maybe, new sink in the bathroom, a few new tiles. So maybe you spend $20,000 on your house, but you could potentially get $100,000 more in the sale. So think about it like that for your business. So that's sort of the first approach that I would look at from that perspective. When the founder wants to exit, what are those things behind the scenes that we can fix to elevate the brand?
Yeah, well, and you hit on so many interesting things there, which is, one of the key ones is, sort of this idea of, well, we have a good logo. Our website's, up to date. But so many of these things really get scrutinized during diligence, and good enough isn't really good enough. And if you want to signal to potential buyers or to the marketplace that you really have sort of operational maturity, then having all of these things really well documented and having that as part of the data room and all of those things goes so far to really help justify it. And one of the things that we work a lot on is sort of this concept of sort of quality of earnings, and oftentimes folks will look at, well, what's the quality of the revenue systems that underpins those earnings? And so we like to be able to point to, well, we have a sales system, and this is what it looks like, and a CRM that documents it. But the same thing is true from the brand strategy perspective of, well, they say we have a great brand in the marketplace. Okay, well, show us your brand guidelines. Oh, well, yeah, that doesn't really exist. Well, then do you really have a strong brand in the marketplace? Probably not. And so if you can't stand up to the scrutiny, it makes so much sense to invest in those types of things that will really help you maximize the work that you've already done on the business.
Yeah, and it's not always reinventing the wheel, right?
Right.
A lot of times it's actually just cleaning up the things and adding details. It's not like we need to completely, overhaul the logo and completely overhaul, like everything needs to change. You probably don't even want to do that too close to a sale.
That's right.
You might want to do it much, many years earlier. I have a client, if I can share, who decided to rename her business to build brand equity in a name because her family name was on the business, and she knew she wanted to sell one day, but not for years. She's like, 10 years from now, I may want to sell this business, but I don't want to sell my family name with it. And I want to bring in associates. I want to bring in other people. And it's much harder to do that when my name is on the business. So she decided years in advance of a sale to invest in a full, complete rename, rebrand, everything that we did for her. And so she's now spending that time to build equity in this new name and this new brand. So when she does go to sell, she's got that turnkey system already built and the reputation because of what she spent the time to do ahead of time. So a lot of forethought there that a lot of people don't end up having, but it's a great example of really thinking ahead. And then sometimes it's actually just looking at, how do we separate the founder, make it less about the founder? Maybe it's a great photo shoot that includes more of the team. Maybe it's something that I'm starting to do now. We're working with teams to actually help them build the personal brand of maybe their leadership team so that they're sharing more things on maybe their LinkedIn or social media that helps to elevate the business brand. So it's not just the founder doing it on their own. So sometimes it's case by case. What is the best strategy?
So I love something you said there, which I think is one of the reasons why today many businesses leave money on the table by not investing in fixing their marketing and sales systems. And that's because so many marketers don't understand the context of a business preparing for sale. And so they pull out the same playbook that they use every time, which is, well, let's rebrand. Let's do research and redo our strategy and relaunch everything, because that's the sort of classic marketing playbook. But you're so sort of insightful to recognize in this business context, that's not the right thing to do most of the time. And instead, it's how do we take the assets that exist and really put the best foot forward instead of throwing out the baby and the bathwater and starting to, refill the tub, which is so smart. And one of the reasons why there's this sort of misconception in the exit space that, it takes too long for marketing to pay off. It's because so many other marketers kind of start with things that aren't even the right place to start with their business. So it's such an insight that you have there.
Thank you. Yeah. And the reality is, obviously, like a full rebrand does take a long time. That can be 6+ months to really roll something out. However, if we're just being really strategic and going, okay, you're all over the map with your colors and your fonts, and you don't have consistency around your logo, and I'm seeing different versions of things, and somebody strayed off track with like a color picker once, and now your blue is like 10 shades different from what it's supposed to be. People don't recognize like that. We could just strategically get in there, fix it, build the system, and get out. That's like one piece that could take a week, right?
That's
like
right.
It doesn't have to take months and months and months.
That's
so, that there are ways to be really strategic about it that don't require a big overhaul of everything.
That's right. So you've hit on this a couple of times so far, and I think it's really worth diving into deeper, which is this idea of sort of the founder dependence, and when sort of the founder is the brand. And you talked about going through it with, sort of your own business of, it being the Laura Show versus, Lab Creative. Talk to us a little bit about, let's step into the shoes of someone who might be listening, that's a founder that has spent 10 or more years building the business off their own reputation. And now they're starting to seriously think about that exit, that transition. And maybe they didn't name it after themselves, so they don't have that limitation, but they are starting to realize, I really am the face of the business. What are some ways that you guide them through sort of starting to extricate themselves from that? And maybe what are some things that, even if the sale is sometime in the future, they could start doing today that would make that future process easier when they get there?
Definitely. It really starts with them, separating their identity from the business, right? If you call your business your baby, right, we need to work on doing that. We need to stop doing that.
Because you would never sell your baby.
I was guilty of that. Right. Yeah. Like that was, my husband and I were both entrepreneurs. We used to say, hey, we've got 4 babies. We've got 2 human babies and 2 business babies. So, I've been guilty of calling it that myself. So I think what we do, what I specifically do is that I get in there and I start to help the founder build a personal brand that is separate from the business. And it's so interesting because in doing that, a lot of founders will be saying things to me and I'm like, is that the business or is that you? And they're like, they're like, that's the business. Right. And so it really is difficult because we're all too close to our own brands to be able to see it, especially when it's a personal brand. So I help them see how they're different and separate, but aligned with the business. So to me, starting to build a personal brand where you are known for more than just the business. I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we get very singular focused. And, just like that client I mentioned earlier, she ate, slept, and, breathed her business. That was everything. She said, I, foregoed like travel and a lot of friendships. I didn't have any hobbies. And suddenly I'm out. I've no emails to check. My calendar is blank. And she was like, oh my God, who am I? So I think starting to really identify what could you envision yourself doing post-exit? And let me tell you, it's not going to be hitting the golf course every day for the next 30 years. Everyone I've spoken to who's like, that's their vision, they'll do it for a month, maybe 3, and they're like, I'm bored. Entrepreneurs are not built for just a singular, going and doing leisure. We like to build things. Now, maybe you don't want to be working and hustling to the same capacity that you were, but what are you really passionate about? What do you want to be known for? What would you want people to say about you at your celebration of life or your funeral? And then reverse engineer. So I like to pull them apart from the business so that it's one piece of who they are, not the only thing that they are. So, I had a conversation with a client the other day, and he's like, I feel very one-dimensional. And I'm like, okay, but that's the work we're doing, right?
Yeah.
We're making you 3-dimensional, and we all are, but we often can't see it, or we're so driven in our business that we spend all of our time there. So that's really the first thing, that's starting to look at, okay, who are you separate from the business? And it might be experimenting, what do I like? What is important to me? And playing, actually, trying different hobbies perhaps, or, volunteering somewhere, or mentoring, or, considering things that, would I like this? Is this something I want to actually do or pursue? And spend that time, as I say, to do the deep work that I think a lot of time gets avoided when you're busy doing the business building.
That's so interesting. Well, and as you're talking, I'm envisioning, and I've worked with companies in sort of sales roles where when they launch a new product, they are like, well, how do we build the brand of this product alongside the brand of the company? And in fact, what happens is you start to own more space in the mind of your customer, because you have both a product and a company brand. And I expect that the same thing becomes true when the founder disentangles themselves from the brand of the company and their own personal brand. They can actually now have an even stronger position in the mind of their customers and prospects, because it's the company has these attributes and aspects to it, that it's the sort of the brand positioning and strategy. And the founder is part of that company that has these other aspects and components to it, so that they can have an even larger space in the mind of the customer. Do you see that happen?
Yeah. It's all about brand architecture, right? And creating a beautiful ecosystem, right? So I have my Laura Beauparlant brand, which is my speaking, my writing, my, thought leadership, podcast, all of these things that I'm doing. Then I have the Lab Creative brand, and I have Brandcamp AI. I have multiple brands, but they all work together in an ecosystem. So and it might sound silly, but I use the same colors and the same fonts. So whatever I'm posting about on social media, nothing's jarring. It all fits in my ecosystem. If you see something that's Laura Beauparlant, the speaker, and then you see something that's Lab Creative, they each have their own messaging, their own visual brand and language, but they work together. So my personal brand builds up Lab Creative builds my personal brand, and vice versa. Now, when you're a founder building a personal brand, you want to make sure that becomes a separate entity. So if you are doing something that you want to sell, just as a cautionary, note, is you want to be able to take that brand with you when you leave.
Yeah.
You don't want that as a sub brand to the big family of brands. Say you have a company, you've got multiple products. If your personal brand is in there, and I don't know all of the legal details of that, but just something to consider, that you don't want your personal brand, your name, if you have a website, your content, your ideas, to be sold with the business. The whole point is that you have something tangible that you get to take with you.
That's so interesting. And as you're talking about it, I'm having reflections back on conversations that I've had. Again, we come oftentimes from the sales side, and as we start to get into fixing up their sales processes as they prepare for a sale, well, who's your best salesperson? And very often the founder's like, well, it's me, and they're very proud of it. And I'm like, that's a problem, because you don't want to be the top salesperson for the new company. You want to be able to leave. And Oftentimes we find just by taking what they naturally do and turning it into a process, it can, be transferable and much more sellable and make the business much more valuable than if it just all lives between their ears. And I imagine there's some of that when they transfer their kind of personal brand, the components that they're going to leave with the business versus the components they're going to take with them.
And that's where that untangling needs to happen. So there's clarity around this is the business and this is me, the founder. So that when you're in that space of selling, there's a clear division line.
So interesting. So one thing that kind of resonated when we first met was that you operate not as like an agency, and I've had the benefit of working with some wonderfully talented agency folks in my career and at some great agencies. But the agency model oftentimes is, well, get them hooked, and meaning like get the client hooked. And I've certainly had clients that I work with that sort of feel like they're an indentured servant to their agency because they're always kind of relying on their agency to tell them what to do next, or not sort of building that internal capability. Something unique about the way that you approach working with clients, and frankly, the way I do as well, is you're coming in to fix a very strategic problem and provide a strategic solution, knowing that there's a point at which you're going to transition out and enable and sort of leave them with all of the benefits from it and not, keep them dependent on you. Talk to us a little bit about how you do that. How do you work with companies to create that value that's not just, well, this is a forever project. How do you work with companies to sort of create that?
Yeah, the first thing that I always do is take both the business and the founder through Brand Camp, which is my branding methodology. So I like to do those either concurrently or kind of in tandem so that we're really clarifying the position of the business. And sometimes they've got pieces, but we're like, does anything need to change? Are there holes? Really take a look at that. And at the same time, build the personal brand for the founder. So to me, that's really step one is this is the founder, this is the business. That's really key. Then it would be strategically looking at what else needs to change. And sometimes it is a full, visual rebrand that we've done, whether it's, pre-sale or, sometimes they're starting a business with the end in mind and they come and work with us. Sometimes they've bought a business and the brand was a hot mess and they've come to us to do the full visual brand. So, the next phase would be looking at that. So I would look at everything from your photography, your colors, your, again, those brand guidelines, your social media, I'm not a social media person. I'm not a marketing person. I'm not going to suddenly be like posting for you, but I'm going to audit it. And I'm going to tell you where there are holes and what you can fix. And I can either hand over sort of a really comprehensive, here's what your team can do internally that we would suggest, or there's pieces that, I can do and work with their team. So there's a few different ways. Again, it depends on the situation. Something that I've been really excited, and I'm going to be working with a few people on this right now, is to work with their leadership team on, which I think I mentioned it earlier, on building the personal brand of each individual on the team, and then giving them my storytelling framework so that they're all posting fairly regularly in a way that reflects who they are as their own thought leader, but it's all leading back to the business, right? So it's elevating. So then it's not just the founder, we're elevating the personal brand of everybody on the team. So they feel great. They start to have, a voice in the world and in their industry. And the reality is that posts on a personal social platform, I think the stat that I have is you get 562% more reach than on a company profile.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, and I see that, like if I post something on the Lab Creative LinkedIn profile or my personal, it's through the roof. So imagine if everybody on the team was doing that and it wasn't just the founder. Yeah. So that's when we start to make the brand less founder dependent too, because If the founder stops posting on social media, but everybody else is still posting, then it's not as noticeable as if it was only the founder posting and now they're not. And it's like crickets.
Yeah. I suspect that makes a big cultural impact in the organization too, because at these inflection points of the founder, exiting, I'm sure a lot of that leadership team is like, well, where are we without, the founder? Have you just been using me up so that you can now sell the business and parachute out? Whereas when you sort of make the effort to start to create this inclusive and build out the brands for this leadership team, that keeps them there longer, which helps with any earnouts that might exist after that transition, which is oftentimes a part of the way the deal is structured. And also sort of mitigates the risk of losing those key players that potential buyers would be worried about. So it makes the business that much more, valuable, attractive, transferable, and sellable.
Absolutely. And I think, we can talk about AI, or we don't need to talk about AI, but I think today there's so much content being put out there. There's so much noise. So marketing is getting harder.
That's right.
It's getting harder to connect with people, and people want human connection. They want stories. They want to hear what is happening in your world or have something related to that. So by leveraging AI, which I show people how to do that, but tell your stories that will connect on a human level and make it memorable. Like I had people, the first time I realized how important this was years ago, where I remember somebody came to me and they're like, I want a story like the one you shared about you flying down the Hudson River with your dad in his plane. And I was like, okay. Because I explained what I do through the lens of, taking this trip with my dad in his small single engine airplane, flying down the Hudson River at 1,000 feet, which is a very special experience. Like you have to have a special rating in order to do it, special training my dad had to go to. So I'm flying next to Manhattan at 1,000 feet, looking down at the city, thinking, I've never seen Manhattan like this before. And then I realized I'm so used to being like in the buildings, looking up the sights, the smells, the sounds, and you can only see, what's really close to you. And I'm like, oh, this is what I do for my clients. I'm like that 1,000-foot view. They're in the buildings. I'm up above the buildings and I can see what they can't see. And so I shared what I do through this story with pictures of me with my dad, with the headsets on, and the number of people that could tell me back that story and explain what I do to somebody else because of the story I wrapped it up in. So imagine if everybody was doing more storytelling, leveraging AI to be able to maybe tell them faster, easier, but using story to explain something will make it more memorable and less of this generic kind of garbage that a lot of people are tired of seeing.
So compelling and such a great story. Like I can see all the images. You didn't even show me the presentation. I can see the headphones and the view of the city, and so compelling. Well, Laura, you're obviously an expert in a ton of interesting topics that I'm passionate about. We could talk about all day, but I got to be mindful of your time. So, but before I let you go, tell us, who do you work with? How exactly do you help them?
Well, we work with founders who are at this inflection point. They're considering an exit and they're wondering, who are they without this business? What's next for them? They know they're not done and they're not really sure what that next move is. Those are the people I personally love working with the most because I know that I can have a huge impact on the founder. The business, yes, we can clean it up. We can, get all of the, T's crossed and I's dotted when it comes to brand guidelines and all of those details. That's an easy thing for me. But that work with founders when we can really help them with their identity and separating them. And again, it's, it doesn't matter what industry. I actually love the variety of different industries. It's more this inflection point they're at in their life and their career. Or perhaps you've already sold and you're like, I don't know who I am now.
Right.
right? Those are also the people I love working with because it's going, well, it's not too late. Like, let's start now and help you figure out what that identity is and to build that personal brand for what you're doing next. So those are the people that I love working with the most and can have the most impact on.
Awesome. And what's the best way to get in touch? How can they engage with you?
Yeah, so check out our website, labcreative.ca. I am in Canada. You can email me, laura@labcreative.ca. Check me out on LinkedIn at Laura Beauparlant, and I'll share a couple of links with you as well. So I have a founder's brand playbook, which people can just download from my website. You don't need to give me your email or anything. So I'll make sure you've got the link to be able to share with people for that. Really valuable tool for people to kind of assess where they're at and what they might need to do. And the other is actually an AI. It's a GPT that I've created that I'm happy to share the link to, that people can actually run their own audit on their business and themselves to get some high level. Is the brand too founder centric? What can AI find out about your business? Which we didn't even delve into that. Like, what is AI saying about your business? That's a whole other conversation. But it really will help you to kind of assess maybe what the gaps are today. And then, book a call with me and we can explore, whether or not we're a good fit to work together.
Awesome. Well, all of those links will be in the show notes below if you're on YouTube or wherever your favorite platform is. And Laura, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I know our audience learned a lot.
Thanks a lot, Mark. I really enjoyed being here.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining this episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint podcast. We hope you've gained insights to grow your business. If you enjoyed this discussion, please rate, comment, like on your favorite platform, and share to others who will find it useful. Do you know a CEO, founder, or leader at an early stage B2B services, tech, or SaaS company who would like to be a guest and share their story? Send us a note. Let's schedule a conversation.